By 2012, Boko Haram had become a name that inspired fear across West Africa. Entire towns in Nigeria's northeast lived in dread of sudden attacks. Schools were emptied. Markets were shuttered. Soldiers, teachers, and children alike became targets. But while Boko Haram grew more violent, not all its members followed willingly. Deep within the group, a different current was flowing, one of disagreement, quiet resistance, and ideological unrest. Among its ranks were fighters and commanders who didn't believe in Abubakar Shekau's brutal interpretation of jihad. They questioned the logic of killing Muslims en masse. They were appalled by the slaughter in mosques and villages. Some of them had trained abroad, in Mali or Mauritania, and understood global jihadist doctrine beyond Shekau's warlordism. These weren't moderates, but they were militants who believed war should have rules. And Shekau had abandoned all rules. Tensions grew. Private arguments turned into silent mutiny. These dissenters were no longer convinced they were fighting a holy war. To them, Shekau had become a madman, obsessed with blood and martyrdom. They feared that Boko Haram was spiraling into self-destruction, dragging Nigeria's Muslim north with it. They wanted out. But leaving Shekau's movement wasn't a resignation, it was treason. And treason was punishable by death. Still, in 2012, they vanished. They didn't renounce jihad. They simply chose to fight it differently. The splinter group reappeared months later under a new name, Jama'atu Ansarul Muslimina fi Biladis, Sudan, translated as the vanguard for the protection of Muslims in Black Africa. But soon, the world would know it simply as Ansaru. From the outset, Ansaru positioned itself as a more refined, more focused alternative to Boko Haram. It condemned Shekau's massacres. It rejected suicide bombings in markets and churches. And it drew a sharp line between enemy combatants and civilians, at least in principle. But this wasn't pacifism. Ansaru had a different enemy: foreign powers, Western contractors, and Nigerian security forces. Unlike Boko Haram, Ansaru didn't broadcast its violence with grainy execution videos or chaotic rants. Instead, it struck like a scalpel. In November 2012, it claimed responsibility for ambushing a Nigerian army convoy escorting foreign nationals. In early 2013, it kidnapped a French engineer in Katsina State. Soon after, it abducted 7 foreign workers, including Britons, Italians, and Greeks, from a construction site in Bauchi. The message was clear: Ansaru would not waste time on civilian terror. It would target the state and the global powers behind it. It wasn't just about ideology. Ansaru had help, serious help. It aligned with Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb, AQIM. This gave the group access to desert training camps, weapons from Libya, and a transnational network of jihadist cells that stretched across Mali, Niger, and even into southern Algeria. Ansaru wasn't operating alone. It was part of a bigger project, the expansion of Al-Qaeda's influence into West Africa. But just as its name was rising, Ansaru seemed to disappear. Between 2014 and 2019, Ansaru faded almost completely from public view. Some believed it had collapsed. Others said its members were killed in military raids. A few joined back with Boko Haram. A handful reportedly crossed into Mali to fight alongside AQIM. Intelligence agencies considered the group dormant, a failed experiment in ideological insurgency. This wasn't far-fetched. In 2014, Boko Haram had pledged allegiance to ISIS, further widening the ideological gap. Ansaru refused to follow. And when the Nigerian army increased its pressure in the northeast, most of Ansaru's bases in that region were dismantled. Their emir, Abu Usman al-Ansari, was reportedly killed. Another senior figure, Abubakar Adam Kambar, also disappeared from intelligence radars. The group scattered. Its silence lasted for years. But dormancy does not mean death. In the shadows, Ansaru was rebuilding, not in the northeast, but far away, in Nigeria's northwest. In early 2020, Nigeria's security services began noticing something unusual. In the forests of Kaduna, Katsina, and Zamfara states, regions traditionally plagued by banditry, not jihadism, a familiar logo started appearing on leaflets and in intercepted messages. It was the insignia of Ansaru. But this wasn't the same group from 2012. This version had evolved. It had learned from its failures. Ansaru was no longer trying to fight like Boko Haram or ISWAP. It had become a hybrid force, part jihadist, part ideological movement, part silent infiltrator. It began embedding itself in rural bandit networks. Not through domination, but through cooperation. In exchange for shelter and access, Ansaru offered weapons, training, and something the bandits lacked: ideology. Their tactics reflected this evolution. In February 2020, Nigerian police forces launched an operation in Kaduna and killed several fighters in a forest camp. What they found was alarming: Arabic training manuals, AQIM propaganda, and encrypted communications with groups outside Nigeria. Ansaru wasn't just back, it was adapting. And it was moving quietly, using forests, rivers, and rural poverty to its advantage. While Boko Haram raged and ISWAP sought to govern, Ansaru followed a third path, the Al-Qaeda model. Its operations were patient. Its ranks were small, often no more than 200 to 300 fighters. But each fighter was valuable, trained, disciplined, and ideologically hardened. They avoided high-profile territory grabs. Instead, they focused on ambushes, kidnappings, and targeted propaganda. They distributed leaflets in villages, urging Muslims to reject Shekau's legacy of chaos. They condemned government corruption and military excesses. And they framed themselves as the true protectors of Nigerian Muslims. Reports from the region suggested Ansaru fighters had returned from Mali with advanced battlefield training. They used snipers, camouflaged ambushes, and real-time intelligence, far more tactical than their Boko Haram counterparts. And they avoided the mistakes of the past. No viral videos. No open declarations of war. Just silence until it was time to strike. For years, Ansaru maintained the image of a more restrained, disciplined faction. It claimed to avoid civilian bloodshed, to target only the state and foreign interests. But as its power slowly returned, so did its violence, and this time, it left no doubt. In January 2020, just before Nigerian forces uncovered their re-emergence in Kaduna, Ansaru fighters ambushed a convoy of Emirate security personnel near Benin Gwari, an area long plagued by banditry. The attack was swift and deliberate. At least 2 officers were killed on the spot. Survivors spoke of militants in desert camouflage, using military-grade rifles, shouting Arabic commands, a clear sign of foreign training. That was only the beginning. In February 2020, Ansaru released a statement claiming responsibility for attacking a military base in Damari Forest, boasting that it had killed several soldiers and seized weapons. Independent verification was difficult. The area is remote and inaccessible, but intercepted intelligence confirmed that Ansaru cells were active in the area, coordinating movements with local bandit leaders. Over the next 2 years, intelligence reports tied Ansaru to kidnappings for ransom in Kaduna, Katsina, and Niger states. In some cases, militants posed as bandits, but victims later described Arabic prayers before executions, and captors delivering ideological sermons condemning the Nigerian government, Western education, and military oppressors. In 2022, Nigeria's Department of State Services, DSS, reported that Ansaru fighters had begun using drones and encrypted communication apps to coordinate logistics, evidence that the group was not just alive, but technologically evolving. A leaked report described a failed attempt to intercept an Ansaru supply route that spanned from Zamfara to Niger's Madi border, part of the same corridor used by armed smugglers from Libya. Perhaps most disturbing were the community infiltration efforts. In several rural districts, Ansaru militants presented themselves as protectors, offering food, enforcing strict Islamic codes, punishing bandits who mistreated locals. Villages, desperate for any form of order, began sheltering the group. In return, Ansaru demanded loyalty and silence. These operations are not spectacular. There are no suicide bombings, no market massacres, no filmed beheadings. But they are strategic, brutal, and persistent. They are designed not just to terrorize, but to embed, to make Ansaru a permanent part of the northern Nigerian landscape. The group is no longer just a splinter. It is a parasite, quiet, methodical, and patient. Ansaru isn't the largest jihadist group in Nigeria. It doesn't hold territory like ISWAP. It doesn't dominate headlines like Boko Haram once did. But in many ways, that's what makes it even more dangerous. It doesn't seek fame. It seeks permanence. Today, it operates in the blind spots, remote forests, porous borders, forgotten communities. It partners with local bandits, preaches to vulnerable villages, and evades surveillance with the discipline of a ghost force. While the world focuses on the flashy chaos of ISIS, Ansaru is laying roots, building networks, and waiting for its moment. And when that moment comes, it won't be loud. It will be surgical, precise, and hard to stop, because the real threat isn't always the enemy you see coming. It's the one that disappears and returns smarter. If you want to understand how groups like Boko Haram and ISWAP rose, and how Nigeria's war against terror unfolded from the inside, watch the rest of our videos in this playlist. This is just one chapter. The war is far from over.